Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Eriana, your host here on this Destiny 2 video, and today we're going to be taking a look at one of my favorite Grandmaster Nightfall Eriana Warlock builds for Destiny 2. Now, there are a bunch of different builds that you can use for Grandmaster Nightfalls, but there's a very specific need in Grandmaster Nightfalls that need to be fulfilled, and this is one of the main builds, the core builds that a lot of people use, which can actually be used on any of the classes. I've just chosen Warlock, and I'm going to be talking about the Warlock recommendations for Grandmaster as well. Throughout this video, you'll be seeing pictures of a build doc that I created for you, fully public for you to use. If you want to get your hands on this build doc, all you have to do is head over to my Discord server. And on the Discord server, there's going to be a channel called #spreadsheets and docs. And around the date that this video came out, you'll find a link to that doc, as well as all of my other spreadsheets and docs if you wanted access to those as well. And on top of that, I also still have a giveaway going on right now for a very, very short amount of time, pretty much to the end of May. You can win yourself an Astro A40 headset, Blue microphone product, and Control Freaks gift code. So make sure you enter as soon as possible. Link in the description down below. And of course, I do these monthly, so just stick around for every month's giveaway. Right, so as I mentioned before, this is a GM Nightfall Warlock build that is built around the Well of Radiance Super and the Eriana's Vow Exotic Special. Using a combination of Eriana's Vow, which has very strong special ammo barrier rounds, with a combination of Austringer, which can be equipped with unstoppable or overload rounds, you can basically handle all champions' special effects by yourself. There's also an alternative to this that I'll be talking about along the way that uses Mountaintop in your kinetic for a very strong special ammo damage option, which does require a significant armor change to get enough special ammo. And finally, the Well of Radiance in the entire Attunement of Grace subclass has fast healing and boss damage utility. Now, the weapons and armor mods will be the focus of this build and can technically be used on any class with the appropriate subclass choice. This build specifically uses the Warlock recommendation, which is usually required for most GM Nightfalls, unless they're using some special type of approach. Moving on, let's go ahead and talk about these specs. For the class and subclass, obviously a Warlock Solar Attunement of Grace. I personally like using Solar Grenades, Healing Rift, and Burst Glide. For the guns, my preferred combo is going to be Austringer, Eriana's Vow, and Wendigo. Again, as I mentioned before, the kinetic can be switched out for Mountaintop, and you have to have very specific sets of armor we'll be talking about in a little bit. And then, of course, for the heavy, depending on the type of shield you need to burst, whether it's arc shields or void shields, using Wendigo or Hammerhead are going to be different options. And then finally, for the sword, on Tree of Probabilities, there's a very special strategy. I'll talk about that when we get to alternative. Next up, let's talk about the armor. Now, the armor that I'm recommending for this video, and that's going to be on screen, is going to be the recommendation for using a Mountaintop. The general idea here is if you're not using a Mountaintop and instead you're going to be using the Austringer, just remove a lot of the grenade launcher recommendations and focus more on hand cannon and special ammo and other stuff that you may need. And the reason why I'm doing it like this, even though this is the secondary alternative version with Mountaintop, you have to very specifically optimize your armor, and I wanted to talk about those optimizations specifically. Whereas with Austringer and Eriana's Vow, you can be a bit more lax. Right, so for the armor, in general, you're going to want to have a lot of hand cannon, grenade launcher, special ammo, and resist. That's going to be the common theme across most of the armor pieces. And for my build, all of these armor pieces are going to be on void affinity. And to use hand cannon and grenade launcher options, they have to be void. So it's a good combo and it works well. For the headpiece, I like using hand cannon and grenade launcher ammo finder and void resist. There's a lot of missions like inside Terminus that you're going to need some void resistance. For the arms, use hand cannon and grenade launcher loader to reload them faster, and concussive dampener. For the chest piece, I use Phoenix Protocol as my exotic option because it allows me to get my well faster, and generally there's really not that much of a better option. As for the mods, hand cannon and grenade launcher reserves are always nice to have, and finally boss resist. And for the leg piece, hand cannon and grenade launcher scavenger with major resist, and of course if you need special ammo finisher on your team and nobody else has it, you should switch out some things for special ammo finisher as long as 1 to 2 people on your team have it. And finally, for the class item, Dire Artillery, so you can get more super from grenade launcher kills, and of course Dynamo, minor resist, all pretty straightforward. And as you've probably seen, I didn't mention these seasonal mods. I'm still playing around with them. These are just my recommendations in the place that they fit the best. On my current armor setup, I have a full 10 out of 10 energy used on every single armor piece piece except for the chest piece because it does not have a seasonal mod slot, so I like to think that I've optimized my armor pretty hard. Moving on, let's talk about the gameplay, because it's one thing to know you have the right armor and right weapons, it's another thing to use it properly. Now, as I said before, this is a Grandmaster Nightfall build that is very specifically designed to handle the difficult Nightfall champions and assist your team with Well of Radiance, healing grenades, and healing rifts. Your kinetic weapon, Austringer, is used for red health enemies and for unstoppable or overload round utility. Eriana's Vow is used for breaking barrier champions' barrier bubble much faster than all primary ammo options, and is also a fast killing and DPS option. Eriana's Vow can break barrier champions' barrier bubble in around 3 to 4 shots, which actually can still headshot through the bubble, so make sure you're still going for those headshots. And of course, your heavy weapon should be used to break matching shields. If there's a lot of arc shields or a lot of void shields, you should change your heavy based on that, and of course they're also useful for DPS bursts on champions and boss damage, so use them accordingly. And while using this build either with Austringer or Mountaintop, it's also very important again to have at least 1 to 2 people on your team with special ammo finisher, because the fact that Eriana's is a special weapon and you need to use it for barrier champions, which are the biggest problem in Grandmaster Nightfalls, you need to make sure you have enough ammo, so special ammo finisher is a must on your team. As for your subclass, your Well of Radiance is a very strong heal and weapon damage buff. You should use it for many of the main areas and strikes where you need higher damage bursts or fast healing. It is not only used for boss damage, but can also be used for that. Honestly, it's kind of a secondary afterthought when it comes to boss damage, and it is important to keep in mind that the Well of Radiance is a very strong and fast heal and a very safe place to survive most attacks from most enemies outside of slam melee attacks and some high burst options. Don't be afraid to use your Well of Radiance to prevent yourself from dying. Surviving is much more important than having a super in your pocket, especially with limited revives in Grandmaster Nightfalls. Now, as far as the rest of the subclass goes, your neutral game is often an overlooked part of this subclass, but is actually really strong. Your grenade can be charged for a full heal and an overshield for your whole team. Your melee gives you an empowering buff from any melee hits, but honestly is too dangerous to use in GM Nightfall, so avoid melees where you can. And finally, healing or empowering your allies will also increase the recharge rate of all of your abilities. You can very easily chain rifts infinitely and grenade heals if you're consistently supporting your team. My recommendation, spam rifts. If you're behind cover, put a rift down. Your teammates will always come near you because healing is really strong. And finally, my exotic choice is Phoenix Protocol. It's based on the need for more Well of Radiance supers, and it's not a critical part of this build, but unfortunately is the only one with a good benefit for this gameplay. A lot of the other options depend on melees, grenades, getting certain kills, or damage types, and they don't fit that well with this build, but you can change it out if you want. And finally, let's get into more detail about the alternatives to this build. Now, the weapons are a critical part of this build with only a few alternatives. Austringer can be switched out for a 110 hand cannon like the Duke 44 if you want more range. Just make sure you're using the highest range option for staying safe in engagements. Anything with less range like spare rations or 150 hand cannons require you to get a lot closer, and that is the reason why I have chosen Austringer, because it is one of the highest range 140 hand cannon options. On top of it having great perk options and availability from Menagerie, a common alternative that I've mentioned multiple times along the way is to use Mountaintop as your kinetic weapon while also still using Eriana's Vow for a high DPS and killing speed. Now, with double special ammo weapons, you need to make sure you're optimizing your armor for special ammo, grenade launcher, and hand cannon benefits as I described previously, because anytime you pick up special ammo, it splits the ammo between the two weapons, so you need to go hard in the paint to make sure these weapons get enough ammo. But if you are using this combo, you have a lot of stopping power. You're going to be able to get 100 more kills than any of your teammates because you can kill enemies a lot more effectively. Now, generally, I would recommend against double special ammo weapons, but in this instance, it actually works out pretty well. However, Mountaintop should not be used in every case. If you're using Mountaintop, you have to make sure one of your teammates has unstoppable or overload rounds covered, because that's the whole point of Austringer, is to cover all of the options. And oftentimes, it's also important to have multiple teammates with these same types of rounds, so if one of them dies, you're not totally screwed. And for the heavy slot, there might be a little bit of a surprise here that a sword is recommended. There's very specific Nightfall bosses like Tree of Probabilities with a Ward of Dawn bubble. You can do pretty high damage bursts with swords, and it works very well. And you combine this with the appropriate sword perks like Passive Guard, Disrupting Blade, Sword Scavenger. You can actually do really well to kill this boss quite quickly. In general, there's no subclass alternative for the Warlock in GM Nightfalls. It's very rare, I would say, to see a Warlock not using Attunement of Grace. And as I mentioned before, Phoenix Protocol can be changed. It's not super critical, but I just don't find that other options are really that great for this gameplay. When it comes down to it, the Grandmaster Nightfall is the hardest of the hard when it comes to PvE content. So you cannot melee, you cannot depend on getting grenade kills, you cannot depend on getting specific damage type kills if you're not using those specific damage type weapons. So you actually get limited a lot more than you think, which is why a lot of times when I recommend things for top 10 weapons or top 10 armors, I'm very specifically referring to how well they would do in Grandmaster Nightfalls, because it is starkly different than anything else in the game, and definitely different than raids. But anyways, that is going to be the end of the video. Hopefully my continuous ranting about this build did not talk your ear off. I did want to be very specific and also offload all the information that I do know about these builds and how they're used, because I wanted to make it the best guide I could. But obviously, to err is human, so please let me know in the comments down below if I missed anything, or if you had any pointers or tips that I may have also missed in this video. But of course, do be nice, I also still have feeling. But that's it. Hope you guys did enjoy. My name's been Chronic, and I'll see you guys on the next one.